Todd Talk number 5. For some of you, who's made 5 of 5? Wow, that's impressive. I'll give you a free breadstick at the end if you want. So Todd Talk number 5, we're going to be doing on biofeedback. So a little context for kind of the journey that we've been on. We've done some stuff on self-talk. We've done some stuff on boundaries. We've talked about balance. Last week we talked about anxiety. And this week I wanted to kind of end with maybe a practical step. If you recall from last week, I did bring some toys for show and tell for our weighted bear and different things that we can use for helping with anxiety in that process. Today is going to be more of a demonstration of a technique that we can use known as biofeedback. And this is something that I use when most of the time when working with athletes who struggle with performance perfection or high stress, underperformance. Basically, when you're under pressure in tournament situations, it's really hard to practice managing our biological and physiological responses. And so as we work with them in a psychology side of things, we want to start training that process. One of the fun activities I used to do with my golf team was I call it golf Jenga. Everyone played Jenga before? So I like to take toys and turn them into therapeutic instruments, shall we say. And I have it's called Golf Jenga. And one of the things with golfers, if you know any golfers who are competitive golfers, is they always are counting their score all the time. And it's really annoying for them most of the time. And because they're keeping track of their score, it's almost like OCD. Because they're constantly counting all the time, it creates anxiety, whether they're up or whether they're down, and they'll count everyone else's score as well, whether they're up or whether they're down. But really, at the end of the day of a golf round, it doesn't matter what you have on hole number 10. It only matters what you have on hole 18 when you're done. But you can get so stuck on hole 18 because you keep counting your score. So I decided to figure out, well, how do you train someone to stop doing that or to see a bigger picture? So I created a game using Jenga. And on my Jenga, my golf Jenga, you will see all of the blocks. Everyone's seen it, right? And on each block, there's a score. So you might have +3, or you might have -3, or +1, or -1, or par, right? And these all kind of mimic the idea of when I pull this block out, that's how many points I got on this hole. That was what we were trying to do. And then on the other side of the block, it would have all of these sports psychology questions that I'd been training my team to apply. Along the way, though, there would be these questions that say everyone had to add up their score. So you'd make everyone on the team, we'd all be pulling blocks out, we'd add up, and everyone would go around, I'm 3 under, I'm 4 over, I'm blah, 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 blah. And then there was a question, after everyone added their score up and said it, there's another question, they had to do it in this order. I said, what does this score mean? And everyone unanimously had to say absolutely nothing. Because how do you win Jenga? Do you know? You can't knock it down, right? The whole idea, I mean, if you have 50 points or if you're 3 under, at the end of the day, don't knock the tower over. And sometimes we lose sight of what the actual goal is and what our objective, but we get super anxious about it. And when you start out playing Jenga, it's really easy. We're not that anxious. But as you get into the game, as you start playing, and as you start jeering at your friend, don't knock it over, woo, hey, they're cheating, you can only use one hand, oh, that was mine, right? The pressure goes up because you're now really afraid of both the thing falling over and physically scaring you, right? Because that's just I'm so glad this game's over because there's stress. But the more you played, the higher the stress got. But how do you practice not allowing the external locus of control, the things outside of us, to determine how we feel inside? And it's hard to practice those things. So finding ways to train this part of your brain is key if you're doing any kind of performance type events. We have exams coming up. I don't know if you realize this, but this is a performance type event. So these are the same principles that happen. So I've got a couple, before we start talking about this, I do have a couple of other kind of demonstrations. You remember, as a revision, for those who weren't here last week, we talked about this diagram, the stress, anxiety relationship. I never knew that these markers could be like, I want to click it because my tip has just disappeared into the end of I want to click it like a mechanical pencil. Performance stress anxiety has a relationship that looks like this, if you can see it over there. The deal is you don't want to have no stress or no anxiety, because if you have zero stress or very little anxiety, your performance goes down. If you have too much, so if you have it up here at an 8, performance also goes down. So not enough anxiety or too much anxiety, performance is always down. So we want to have a little bit of anxiety, because a little bit of anxiety or a healthy relationship with anxiety actually increases performance. Therefore, when you get ready to take your exam and you're like super nervous and I'm really worried about it, that's okay. Don't be so afraid of that feeling, because that feeling's going to keep you alive. If you walk in like, oh, I've got this, I'm just going to review the notes. We're having this conversation with my daughter at the moment. She's 12. She's starting to learn that in 6th grade, you have to actually start reviewing your notes. You know, she said, well, are you ready for your test? Yeah, we did it like 3 weeks ago. I know how to do it. And you get into the test, and she would fail. And she's like, I don't know what happened. It's like, what happened was you thought it was too easy, so stress was low, and performance was low. So you got to have kind of this relationship. It's like, okay, I'm a little stressed, but I'm actually okay with that. Too much stress also reduces your performance as well. So one of the things that we need to do is when we get stressed, there's a physiological response that takes place. To demonstrate that, I have a balloon, because balloons are the greatest illustrative things ever made. So I have lots of illustrations of balloon. So here's our balloon. How are you feeling at the moment? Everyone feeling okay? Everyone's pretty relaxed? Okay, so here's our floppy balloon, no big deal, okay? Now I use this balloon for a couple of different illustrations, the one we're going to do today, and I also like red ones because this is how anger works, right? Not very angry, but then something happens, and we blow a little bit of stimuli into our feelings and our emotion, and now we've got angry, kind of feeling a little angry, a little tense, right? Your roommate perhaps didn't pick up their clothes. You know, maybe someone stole the parking spot that you just plowed out or something. We were talking about that earlier, right? Maybe you came out to your car and it got plowed in, and you get a little bit of, okay, a little frustrated, right? So this is like anger. This is what it's a little bit like. Okay, this of course keeps building up. And so you blow it in a little bit more, right? It's getting more tight, more tense. This is anger. Now if you want to relax and manage anger, the best way to do it is to release some of that tension, right? Let out some of that. That's sometimes easier said than done, because then someone else comes along. Okay, now here's you. This is your emotional state. And here, this is a corsage pin, okay? They're the biggest pin that I could find. That's why I have a go. So this is another kind of stimuli. Not very big. Which one's bigger? This one, right? So this is our pin and this is our balloon. Now, when these things start to come into contact with each other, you will notice that around this room, people have changed their physiological response. So over here, we've had our ears blocked from the first breath I put into it. Everyone else was sitting fine until I actually showed you this, and then over in this corner, like, oh, I see where this is going, right? And so this pin comes along, and it doesn't kind of matter, it just kind of sits there, and it's super annoying. In fact, every time I do it, people are like, yeah, like, you know, suddenly you've got this weird condition that's started. Like, stop doing that, you know? I'm trying to eat, I'm trying to listen, right? But this thing happens, and we laugh because laughter is a defense mechanism. It says, I'm not going to jump. And if we had, there's not too many guys in it. We've only got a few, 3 guys. Most guys sit in the back, and they're like, I'm not jumping. And they go hypo-anxious, right? They're trying to act like this is not going to bother me because I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of that. That is what I was so afraid of, right? Now, for sake of argument, you'll notice that after I've done that, my voice has also changed. I was adding to the stimuli by getting louder and more exciting, right? And we don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's a balloon. But there's stimuli in our environment, and because of that stimuli, your brain is responding whether you want to or not. Now, has anybody ever been killed by a balloon before? Obviously not, because you're all here. Huh? Have you ever seen anyone killed by a balloon? No. Maybe a hot air balloon, but I haven't seen that happen either. The reality is that silly little balloon was actually not going to do anything to you, but why was it so problematic? Why was I doing this? Right? You remember last week, if you were here, we talked about the brain in the hand. This is your brain stem. This is your prefrontal cortex right here. We flip it open. In the middle was your amygdala. Your amygdala activates your fight, flight, freeze response. Right? It activates your sympathetic nervous system, which is the, oh crap, something bad's going to happen response. Right? That is not a thinking part of your brain. I like to think of the amygdala as being a lot like a smoke detector. Smoke detectors don't think, what kind of fire is this? It just responds to stimulus in the environment that then alerts us that we should do something about our current situation. And then our prefrontal cortex, which is this part, tells us whether it's the toast burning or whether the house is actually on fire. Does that make sense? So they work together. But when this is activated, a lot of the times, this disengages your prefrontal cortex. And when that disengages, you're functioning purely out of a fight, flight, freeze response. So when it comes to testing, and you take your test, and you look at that first question, and you're like, oh crap, I don't know what this one is. Oh, I'm going to fail. Your brain begins to create images. Last week we talked about, if I tell you not to think of an elephant, that's not actually possible. Because to say elephant then stimulates a picture so that you know what it is you're not supposed to be thinking about. Now I use this because this is fairly common, it gets good results. If I tell you not to think of an echidna, does anyone know what an echidna is? Okay, few people. You looked it up last week, like what the heck's an echidna? So if I say don't think of an echidna, you're like no problem because I have no idea what it is I'm supposed to be thinking of, right? And if I said an echidna is an anteater, then pretty soon an aardvark jumps into your head, right? You know, one of those, they're like a dog with a long nose. They kind of look like an elephant, but they're not really. They got a long tongue that eats ants. But that's not what an echidna is either. So you're trying to find this thing I'm not supposed to think of by thinking of other things to make sense of it, because that's how we make sense of the world. Now, if I tell you before you look it up, because it's driving you nuts to say what the heck's an echidna, which you can look up, and I tell you it's a hedgehog, you can look it up. It looks like a hedgehog. Everyone will be like, oh, a hedgehog, got it, something like that. That's very different to an aardvark, right? But the process that we use in our brain is we make sense of things by images. Images are then kind of instituted by stimuli that comes into the environment. So anytime we have a fight, flight, freeze response, it's always about self-preservation in some form. You think you're going to die. We are a species to stay alive. We protect ourselves from scary situations, even if it's just a balloon. So once that balloon pops, and it all comes back online, oh, the parasympathetic nervous system. I talk about parasympathetic being like a parachute, right? Oh, that's better. We always laugh when we figure that out, right? Parasympathetic, this will come online. You ever notice that when you don't know something, I don't know if this is true, I heard this once at a conference I went to, and I'm like, maybe, sounds like it could work, makes sense physiologically, just seems a little too good to be true. Part of the reason, to get your prefrontal cortex actually getting blood to it, you can put your hand on it because blood will go to where pressure is in your body. Right? That's why you have to turn when you're in a bed for bed sores and that sort of stuff, it kind of wherever that is. So you can create blood to come to your prefrontal cortex by sticking your hand on it. That's why you can feel it's cooling the blood, it's doing all this sort of stuff. You ever notice that when you don't know a question to somebody, oh yeah. Blood gets that prefrontal cortex going, right? It gets this thing, you know, you can do this, you can do all these things to your head to try and get blood stimulated. It's part of the reason is you're trying to stimulate your prefrontal cortex and engage it. So being this engaged. This engages, though, the best way to get it engaged is through your breathing, your heart rate, and images. Breathing, heart rate, and images. You can control all three of those, although some of them are easier to control than others. So heart rate is something you can learn how to reduce your heart rate. People who disarm bombs for a living can have a very, very low heart rate, which is very good. You know, you've seen the movies where there's 60 seconds. And they're like, okay, it's the red one or the blue one. Hang on, it's 60 seconds. We got to do it. Pull it. Yeah, just wait. we got plenty of time. We don't have plenty of time. I can't run. It was like, calm down, I'm thinking. Right? How is that possible? Because this guy is not going to die because he needs to think. I need my prefrontal cortex engaged. Right? You're freaking out. So people who do that sort of thing for a living can stay very calm. They can keep their heart rate low. They can keep their prefrontal cortex engaged. Breathing, though, is another thing. Breathing goes rapid when you're under stress. So you start to breathe very shallow. That's why you hyperventilate. When you go through childbirth, you learn Lamaze. Right? All these kinds of things, right? It was funny when we did that, we had our kids, I'm like, honey, you're strapped up to a biofeedback machine. You've got a heart monitor, and baby's got a heart monitor, and then, woo, look at that. And she's like, ah, breathe. Don't get stressed out. My body is telling me I'm going to die. So it's like, how do we keep you breathing? How do we, this is a part of keeping you relaxed. So breathing. Heart rate, though, is pushing blood around the body to keep it. It's pumping cortisol, which is your stress hormone. Adrenaline is all getting pumped into your body. These things all work together, and if we don't know how to control some of those things or know the relationship, it can cause us to kind of have a little bit of a meltdown. An interesting thing that I was learning the other day was a lot of people say, are you nervous about public speaking? And people say, yes, I'm nervous. Are you nervous about the test? Are you anxious about the test? Yes, I'm kind of anxious. People who do really well under competition or really well at public speaking, so people would say, are you nervous about speaking? I said, not really. I'm excited. Pretty excited to get up here and do this. Because excitement and anxiousness are actually the same thing. They're doing the same thing. You're pumping blood, you're getting ready, you're getting adrenaline pumping into your body. But we've programmed ourselves to be that anxiety and all this is very, 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 very bad. Whereas for me or for competitors, like this is very, 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 very exciting. Again, competitors, when I was doing golf, we had those who had played competition golf and those who hadn't. They both come to the first tee. One's super excited to get into competition. The other one's going to die. And one doesn't play very well because one's approaching it and channeling that kind of all of that system in a different way. Does that make sense? It's just something that, I thought that was just an interesting concept to kind of, as I tell myself, I'm not anxious, I'm not freaking out, I'm actually just excited to get this going. I'm excited to show what I know. I'm excited to demonstrate my knowledge. I'm excited to go home, and the test is the thing I got to get rid of to get home, or whatever it is. How do I reframe? Going back to ATVs, true fact, deceptive lies about meaning. What is the meaning of the true fact? Can you change that? Can you put in a new story? So with those three things, we're going to talk a little bit about this biofeedback machine. So because it is that weird biofeedback, I do need one willing victim. Is there someone who would be willing to come sit in this hot little chair? All right, come on up. Good, because you're well versed, because you have all 5 of these on your badge of honor. So you'd be the most qualified, perhaps. Remind me of your name again? Andrew. Andrew. All right. So you're going to sit down here. Now this monitor here just goes on your earlobe. And then this guy just clips on your shirt so that you don't pull it off your ear. Does that make sense? Just clip that on there. And then if you can get to a spot where you can kind of see this, that would be good. Now I'm going to try and do, this is always the weird, can't see it, where is it? There it is. Okay, so Andrew, all you're going to do is just sit there and be, are you feeling okay? Bit nervous because you're in front of everybody now? Okay, so I'm just going to keep talking and you're going to have this going up here. Now, I'm going to explain to you what's actually happening, and this is called getting a baseline. So we're not actually going to teach Andrew anything at the moment. He just has to create a baseline for us, so we're going to talk about it. So biofeedback is simply, how do I know what's going on biologically in my system so that I can make changes? A lot of people would say, I would make a change if I knew what it was I was trying to change. Does that make sense? So when you're doing things, again, using our sports analogy, because I find that to be the easiest, in a lot of, if you're in softball, let's say, you might go and get a swing video. They'll video your swing, and then you go back to the computer and you look at it, and then the coach will say, see how you're coming in a little shallow here, you need to do whatever. And you're, oh, good. I didn't know that because I was actually in the moment, but when I can see it, I can then go and make certain adjustments. How do we do that when it comes to our body and our physiology? So biofeedback is simply one of those types of processes. We have all kinds of biological feedback that happen every day. Sweat is a biological feedback. When you start sweating, you know you're nervous. You know you're hot. You know whatever it is, your body is telling you things. When you're angry and you clench your fist or you tighten your jaw, these are all biological things that are telling you something in the environment is stimulating you to get ready to run or to fight or to do something. And if we can be aware of those stimuli, we can begin to adjust. Most of the time, we don't even know we're doing it, right? One of the things that is a little creepy, I realize, is how many people vibrate at lunch, because I notice that all the time. So I'll see people talking and their legs be, and I'm like, they're nervous, or that's a thing to keep them focused on what they're doing. Some people vibrate to stay focused, and they're not even aware that they're doing it. And I'll say, in fact, I saw a brother and sister talking, and both legs were going at the same time together. Because I was sitting across from him, I said, do you realize you guys vibrate at the same rate? Like, you're creeping me out. I know, but I just had to say it because I'd never seen that before. That's just fascinating, because I knew they were brother and sister, and they were having this really deep conversation that, I don't know, but it's like, this is just biological feedback. It happens all the time. But what if we could find a way to understand and know what's going on? So that's kind of what this computer program does. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on. I'm going to use this one. Hopefully you can see, but you guys have that over there to see as well. This basic breakdown of how this works this is called M-Wave, E-M-W-A-V-E, M-Wave, and it's by a company called HeartMath. Okay? I'm not going to give you all of the ins and outs of this process because this would take too much time. But basically what's going on in here is this is called our heart rate variance, and this is demonstrating how it's changing and the different things that are happening as Andrew both tries to focus on what he's doing and tries to listen to what I'm saying and all the thoughts that are going. That's changing heart rate and different things. Down here we've got our coherence score. How often are we in coherence? And then down here we have our coherence ratio, which is red, blue, and green. Now coherence, when we're in coherence, that's called optimal functioning. Now I think of it like a triangle: images, breathing, and heart rate. I don't know why, I just put it in a triangle. When all those three things are working together, that's when we're in coherence. HeartMath would say that the way we need to reduce stress is by intentional breathing, and they call it heart breathing. Now we know our heart doesn't really breathe, but if we can picture in our image as if you were to draw in a breath and as if it was to go through our heart, because our heart is pushing that blood around our body and oxygenating that blood. When our body is under stress, it's going to pump more because it needs to get more blood around. It needs to oxygenate it. It's pushing adrenaline, cortisol, different things. So it starts to pump faster, right? And then it starts to stress us out. And that's when we stop breathing. And we need to get more oxygen in there. We need to be more grounded. So we talk about it in this triangle. So the things that increase coherence is positive images. If I were to say to you, think of your house burning down right now in a big bowl of flames and your dog or your cat's in there. You guys saw my alpacas before and they're on fire. That's pretty distressing. Yeah, no, horrible image, right? Versus think of sitting on a beach somewhere in a hammock, right? Oh, now there we're talking, right? Oh, that just sounds relaxing, just doing that. In fact, when I threw my alpacas up because of my screensaver, you were like, oh, I just feel better now just to see them, right? Just seeing an image can bring this sense of peace and tranquility. When we go into taking a test, if we think we're going to fail, we bring an image with that. I'm not going to be at school anymore. I'm going to get kicked out. I'm going to have to repeat this. I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to have to explain this to my parents. And we have this image as if our house is on fire when it's really not. Versus saying, okay, now we got to go to a good image. We got to find an image that's going to actually help us stay grounded. So Andrew, I need you to think of a place that, what's a nice, you got an image, a nice thing that you'd go to, a happy place, so to speak? You think about that for a second. All right, so you think about your happy place, right? Because I'm going to ask you to do that. And the other thing is heart rate. If you get a happy place, your heart rate can go down. It can start to be more rhythmic in its process instead of jagged. And then our breathing needs to be regulated. Now, breathing is something we can control, sometimes even better than our images. If you ever notice when people are hyperventilating, they used to give them a paper bag. Remember that? Blow into this. A lot of that was just so they would take distract them from the breathing. So you'd watch the bag go open and then would close, open and then close. So, okay, is this helping? I don't know, just watch the bag. Open, closed, right? It's like, it's helping. It's like, that's because you're not thinking about whatever you're thinking about. Or you might say, look at me in the eyes, focus on me. Where are we? We're in my room, we're in this place. You need to calm down. I need to get you to a good place, a good image, because that can help calm everything else down, okay? So there's our breathing, our images, and then our heart rate follows. So what we're going to do is I'm going to press stop. So you say, okay, you've told us all this stuff. Oh, man, I don't like doing it this way. It's like doing things left-handed. Why won't it move? Ah. You can do it. Good night. Why won't it move sideways? Got it. Stop. Ah! Okay. Now, so this is all really jagged, right? Over here, we've got low coherence. That's bad. You want to be in green. 0. No coherence, which is quite normal. Because even when people feel like they're relaxed and I'm fine, they're actually very distracted. That's why when we do sport, you always want to yell at the people if you're allowed to, because they think it's not distracting, but it is. You will be distracted. If you're doing a test and you hear someone, right, or you hear someone leave, walking in the hallway, you might just sit there like this, but in your head you're like, I wonder what they're doing. Oh, I think that was Sarah. I wonder what Sarah's doing today. It's like, do your test. It's like, I can't help it. My brain just, it's just disappearing. So I'm not really focused, even though I look like I'm focused. When you talk about multitasking, oh, I can listen to music, and I can watch TV, and I can watch Netflix, and I can do homework because I'm really good at this. I'm a millennial. So no, you're expert distractors. So I'll answer your question in the end. The expert distractors. You're really good at being distracted. That does not mean you're always good at being coherent. So those are things you just kind of consider. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of coaching now. Okay? If I can get this thing to move without taking forever. Okay, we're going to go all the way up. Get up to this balloon here. Here we go. Oh, man, this is so challenging for me. It's like... Oh. I got to do this on 2 screens. Here, I'm going to do it this way. Hold that. No, got it, this way. If I do it like this, then it'll work. There we go. That's the key. It's like doing things left-handed. It's like, I can't do it. Okay, so now we're going to do this coach. And the coach is, I got to bring this out over there. Here we come. Okay. Now, Andrew, what we're going to do, I like to call this breathing karaoke. Okay? So the way this is going to work is there's a little ball here. Can you see this ball? Okay? You're going to breathe down, and then you're going to breathe up, and you're going to breathe down. Now, what I want you to do in conjunction with that is I want you to have a good thought, like an image that is, you know, a happy image, the hammock, whatever. But make it a real place. Like somewhere it's like, I have places where I went as a kid that were really comforting. If you ever go on and Google me, Todd Munger, and you want to find my Todd Talks or anything else, you will find on there I did a thing for RAs. You're an RA, aren't you? And it was what I do after to take care of myself, and I do an alpaca tour and my goats, and I do this whole thing about this is what I do. When I go home, that's what I do. I go hang out with my animals because it's very relaxing. But when I'm not with my animals and I'm here, I can close my eyes and kind of pretend like I'm there. So it's like these images that we can use as grounding. So you're going to picture an image, and then I want you to focus on your breathing, and I want you to breathe down with the ball, and I want you to breathe up. This is a sine wave. This is how our heart rate variance should look, and not all jagged if we're in coherence. Down here, you're also going to get a red, a blue, and a green line. When you're in green, that means you're doing it right? It's like, oh. And then you need to pay attention, like, oh, this is what it feels like to be breathing like this, trying to get this timing. And then when it's in green, you should be kind of programming, like this is what it feels like to be doing it correctly. Does that make sense? So we'll do that, and then we'll see how you go. All right. So you can all practice along too, even though you're not hooked up to it. So when the ball goes down, so down it goes, then you want to breathe in. And out. In. And out. Just keep breathing in like that. So in. And out. And sometimes it's about just relaxing into the chair, letting the chair take your weight, just focusing on that ball, thinking that it's cool, everything is relaxed. So when it gets to the end, it's going to come up on the front side again, so just kind of keep going. All right, so we're going to stop that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to exit this. And you notice now that with a little bit of direction and a little bit of understanding, we've got 0 in red. We were in green 35. You were in green for a while. Sometimes you can, like most things, when you start being successful, like, oh, this is really easy. And then you, oh, no, come back. I don't know what I just did. And you actually start freaking out, right? It's kind of this weird experience. I thought I was going, and then you lose it. But this is why you train to learn what does it feel like to be in this kind of state and this kind of process. You'll notice up here, while not perfect, we now have actually got what looks to be somewhat like a sine wave. This is the breathing process. So our heart rate variance has begun to mimic that sine wave process. Down here, you've got this says the zone. You might not be able to read that. When we're doing stuff about being in the zone, being in high functioning, we talk about that in athletics, kind of what is the zone. This staircase here, we want that to be going parallel with the top edge of this line. And then we'd ultimately like it to be in green the whole time. So now, this is kind of super boring. Interesting now, but if you had to do this every day, it'd be boring. So now we're going to play a game, okay? So this is a 3-minute game, Andrew, okay? And the way this game works is you're going to color this picture in by just using your mind. Oh, no. Yep, I got to get the picture out there. Hang on. Yeah, here it comes. All right, I'm going to put this out here like this. And so the picture's black and white at the moment, as you can see. And the more that you are in coherence, the more color's going to come in to the picture. Now, the way this also works is that we're going to add, you hear it come over the speakers, we're going to add sound stimuli. So you're going to get rewarded by virtue of, you know, nice chimes and things, like turning the book when you were a kid, and that was always the most exciting bit, right? When the book turned the page, that was like really exciting. It's interesting, those, just to talk about chimes and those little dings, that releases dopamine. Dopamine is the pleasure principle in your mind. Okay, that's how dopamine is released all the time. And this was something else I just learned recently, which I'm like, that's so good. We're addicted to dopamine. I think we kind of know that, the pleasure principle. We'll do whatever it is to release dopamine. Things like eating releases dopamine, which is good. That's what keeps you alive. So when you're growing up, or when we were hunting and gathering, if you didn't actually enjoy the food, you wouldn't go look for the food and you would die, right? So it's like, oh, an apple tree, bling! There's like a dopamine hit, like, woo! And you'd go after the apple. I made it to the tree. Ding, dopamine. Now I'm going to get the apple and then I eat it. Oh, so good. Ding, dopamine, right? That's how it works. It's the same everywhere. All right? Netflix. Ding, another one. Ding, dopamine. Dopamine comes in, right? Now we all have dopamine providers all over the place. This here is a dopamine provider, right? When I finish this and then I go and look at my YouTube thing and I see no one has watched my TED Talk or my TED Talk, no dopamine, So then I have to go back to last year and find one that I did with 77 hits, dopamine, ding, they do like me, right? That's how it works. So you post something on Facebook, ding. Now you might say, well, we're not addicted to this stuff. If I told you in the morning that you get up and if you're an alcoholic and you can't function before you have a drink, would you say you're an alcoholic? Yeah, right? If you're a drug addict and you couldn't get up before you had to hit a pot or whatever it would be, you'd say you're an addict. So my question is, how many of you look at your phone before you get out of bed in the morning? Bing! Right? How many people walk from room to room, even when no one's there, with their phone, as if it were a bottle? You walk around with a bottle like that, people's like, man, you got a drinking problem, you know? But we walk around with our phones like this all the time, and that's all good. But the reality is this is a dopamine hitter. This is like getting us hits of dopamine through various things, and that makes us feel good. That's just how it is. Right? So our brain is giving this. Now, to that end, when you get these dings on here, now you have a new thing. That ding is giving you dopamine, and you feel better, which will make you feel more relaxed. Stress, 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 ding! Oh, so nice, right? So there's going to be sounds. Sounds are very important. It is why when we study, sometimes studying with some light music or music that's not distracting can be helpful because it can keep us in a good mood, which is good. All right, so here we go. So what you've got to do, Andrew, is you've got to apply that breathing principle that we were doing, that ball. Think of that ball, think of the happy place, and I want to see if you get 3 minutes to color this in, and we'll see how you go. You guys are going to watch along. I don't know if someone can maybe hit the lights. It might be a better contrast. All right. Now you can flip the lights on. Enchanting. So let's do a little, let's close this. Wow, look at this. Okay, you can unplug. So you'd be an excellent candidate. So now we've changed this process. Because remember at the beginning at our baseline? Now Andrew didn't really seem super stressed when he came up here or super distracted. He was a willing participant. Because a lot of people say, I'm not really stressed, I'm doing fine, when really I'm not quite coherent. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. With a little bit of coaching, we've been able to change the physiology of how this process works. Now, how do you feel at the moment? Okay. Okay? Sometimes we do this, you feel tired. It's like I actually want to take a nap. I always say if you don't think you're sleep deprived, do some relaxation stuff, and then you'll decide whether you're sleep deprived. Now, I noticed that you were doing really well, and then all of a sudden you weren't doing well. And can you comment, and you might not know when that was. Did you know when you dropped from green down to blue, and then down to red, and then you built it all the way back up?
There's a point in there where, like, I think I hit like 3 or 4 dings like back to back, and then like that caused me to like lose focus a little.
So the dinging, you were like, was it kind of like I'm really doing well, and the dinging and dinging and dinging, and then all of a sudden I'm more focused on the dinging than I am about what I'm supposed to be doing in my body?
Not even that. I don't know. But like it was like I think without the dinging, like it was just like I don't know, it was disrupting my focus.
Sure.
So, like, with one of them, you could just kind of deal with it and stuff, and then there's like one where it was like.
Which is really interesting, which is true. Sometimes you can go and the dinging actually helps, but then you can get over-rewarded. So I talk about that with my golfers. If they go in and they get birdie, ding, 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 ha, 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 and they fall apart. It was like, there's too many dings. I want the dings to come at the end when I need them, not at the beginning, because then I feel like I've got too much pressure. Maybe you do that in a test. You get all the questions. You're like, oh, this is such an easy test. And then all of a sudden you start to get speed wobble, you know. Remember that on your bike? You'd go down like, oh, no, it's going too quick. All right? So, but learning how to train through that is a really important process. Because if you play this enough, you'd be like, dings don't bother me. Dings are good now. I like the dings. Sometimes I have people that do it, and I've never had to sit for 3 minutes and focus that much, which means they can't focus. So it could be, and that's why I like to ask. It's like, I heard someone out in the hallway. Everyone giggled, which is pretty normal when the horse popped up, right? The horse shows up, there's a unicorn. It's not a unicorn. You want it to be a unicorn, but it's not. It's just a white horse. In fact, I did a thing I went in and there was a high school team that brought me in, and we did this with them. They got to the championships several times in their conference, but never won. And so the coach brought me in to do this sports psychology stuff. And so I did this thing with them. And I didn't hear back from them until one of the parents talked to me about how I was thanked at the banquet. And they made this comment that at the conference, because they ended up winning their conference, there was this statement where everyone would yell out, "See the horse." That was the kind of the mantra. And people were like, what is this "see the horse" thing? It was like a theme to the dinner. And I didn't hear it in the say, because when you came in, that horse came up, and that became their kind of "see the horse, stay focused." And it was kind of fun. I thought it was kind of a fun deal. But when it comes up, most people laugh. And when you're trying to do it and people laugh, you might ask, what are they laughing at? What else is going on? And you just get distracted, even though you look like you're totally calm and nothing has changed. So that's just how kind of how the process works a little bit. So in this exercise here, there are several different games that we play. This is a process that we can use in the Student Success Center. We have laptops up there which people can practice, and so if you're interested in trying this out or want to do that, you can connect with Stephanie or one of the counselors, and they'd be happy to either talk to me or figure out how to get you hooked up if you want to practice that. I have a separate game on here which is kind of a fun game, which is a car racing game. So once you can learn how to do this and you can be in coherence, what the downside of this exercise is that you never actually have to do anything at the same time. So if you think about that, it's easy to stay focused when I'm not required to do anything. So then there's a car racing game that basically overlays on this, and you have to race this car, and the only way that you can see is if you're in coherence. Otherwise, it's like the car racing games when you're driving in the snow or the nighttime. So when you're not in coherence, it goes into dark, and you're driving through the dark, and you're trying to figure out. So you're like, and it makes you anxious. Like, I can't see. Well, it's a game. You're not going to die. It's like a balloon. And I love the old gladiator comment. No matter what comes out of those gates, we got a better chance of survival if we work together. Whatever comes out of the gates, don't worry about it. The idea is I have to stay calm, because if I stay calm, I can think more clearly, I can make better decisions, and I can keep my prefrontal cortex engaged, and that's the key. Otherwise, you're just functioning straight out of fight, flight, freeze. So in the video game, when you're playing that, and you lose it, it uses up your gas, so your gas tank goes down if you're not in coherence, and the only way to fill it up is to get back into coherence. And then your fuel gauge goes up, the light comes up, and you can race again. And people are trying to push you off the road. And so there's all this stimuli that's trying to train you to say, no matter what's happening in your stimulus area, you have to stay calm, because that's how you're going to actually function better. So we're going to end there. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you for coming to all the TOD Talks if you made it. If you have questions or things you want to know further, please send me an email or connect. Like I said, these resources are in the Student Success Center. Good luck with exams. You're almost there. You can do it. So have a good afternoon, guys.